Today we're going to talk about how this country is becoming more batshit insane. That's the short of it. No, but what we're really going to talk about is how Americans are becoming increasingly radicalized on political issues. For the vast majority of this country's history, the two political parties, whatever they may be, but for a good chunk of time, obviously it's been Democrats and Republicans, they have obviously disagreed on many issues. But there are a lot of things that they agreed on and they worked together, and even the things that they disagreed on, they had similarities on certain issues. They were mostly towards the center. What we consider center left and center right nowadays was the vast majority of Democrats and Republicans in this country for the vast majority of the times that those two parties have been the main two parties. But now it is much, much different. I noticed this acceleration of people towards the polls, the fringe left and fringe right. I noticed it the most once Obama became president, but it's just been gradual ever since the 90s. It started getting more radical and more radical. And there's a chart. Maybe let me try to find it real quick. Just take any graph like this. I just did a Google search. Interactive chart, radical left. I was trying to find one specific, but I couldn't find it. But this one illustrates the point just fine. Back in '94, it was 60 to 70% of so 64% of Republicans and 70% of Democrats were more to the left or right, respectively, of the median. Now it's up in the 90s, in 92% and 94%. So in just 20 years, 20 to 30% more of people are towards the fringe. I'm just going to go through a couple of political issues and show you just how far radical these people are. And the scary thing is, they don't know that they're radical. Very few people actually identify as a radical and know that they are radical. The unique problem we have here is that the vast majority of Americans in one way or another are radical, but they don't realize it because almost everyone around them thinks exactly the same, or at least a good chunk of people. When Democrats, here's another interesting thing we'll look about. Look how easy I find this stuff. All of these things, all of these articles I'm going to go through, I found like in 2 seconds. Oh, well, that's the same graph we were looking at. Yeah, so only 1 in 10 Americans have friends of the opposing political party. Isn't that just staggering? How 90% of Americans live in a bubble. They only interact with people, or they're only friends with people who think more or less the same way. Obviously, I'm not saying that every single Democrat has the exact same issues, and every single Republican has the exact same stance on issues, obviously. But this is a bubble. This is an ideological echo chamber, where these people just only interact with people that think like them, and a lot of people think exactly like them, and they don't realize how far to the right and to the left that they are becoming, because almost everyone around them, seemingly everyone around them, is doing the exact same thing. And they can't look at themselves from an outward perspective and realize just how crazy they are becoming. It happens gradual over time. 20 years is still pretty fucking fast for this stuff to happen, but it's hard to notice something over the course of 20 years, especially when you have low IQ and don't have perspective and can't think of big, broad generalizations and trends and all these non-tangible things that you don't see every day. Most people don't have the IQ to fucking figure that out. So they don't notice this. So we have the vast majority of the country being so radical either to the right or the left, and they don't even realize it, so that when some normal centrist shows up, hi, like me, I'm the radical, when I am the one that has been historically consistent and the one that historically the country has agreed upon. I believed in the founding principles of this country, the principles that this country has had for the vast majority of its history. I'm the one that's in the middle, and the vast majority of people were with me in the center for the vast majority of the history. But as I stayed in the center, people are becoming going more to the right or more to the left. So I'm sitting here, one of the few people that's still in the middle, and all these other people, way to the right or way to the left, see me like, wow, that guy's really radical. He has some crazy ideas. Not knowing that these ideas are what the country held for the vast majority of its existence. What even they themselves held just 20 years ago. This isn't just younger people coming into being born, being adults, and having their ideas. These are some of the big chunk of this radicalization are the same people that were in the center in 1994, and they become more brainwashed, more radicalized, and they move. So the ideas that I hold, they themselves hold, a vast majority of people held. And now as they move to the left or right, really far out there, I'm still in center. So let's go into these polls, shall we? Just this first one. 61% of Americans back banning the AR-15. Now that is radical. That is radical even compared to Bill Clinton's quote-unquote assault weapons ban. Why? Because when he made that ban from 1994 to 2004, it did not ban the ownership of these guns. It did not ban maintenance of these guns. It just said you can't just buy any more. So for 10 years, you just couldn't buy any more whatever weapon fell under the assault weapon category, even though it's a made-up category by people who don't understand guns, but that's beside the point. Even though that was extremely unconstitutional, obviously, because it breaks the Second Amendment, that is still nothing compared to banning a specific gun and saying, you cannot have this gun. And if not, we will go to your house with guns, ironically, and shoot you if you resist and take that gun from you. Now you're going to say, well, wait, not all Democrats support door-to-door gun confiscation. You're like, you're right, that is true. I'm not saying that they do. But you know what they're going to do instead? It's going to be like a black market item. It's going to be like marijuana in the vast majority of the country. Guess what the SWAT people, most of the SWAT raids in this country, guess what they're going for? Illegal drugs. So people are still breaking down doors and shooting people, lots of them innocent people, for black market items. Mostly drugs, but also illegal guns. And this would make the AR-15 one of those illegal guns. And you would say, well, I don't want to do that either. I just want to make a fine. You're just going to pay a fine. If we know you have AR-15 and you don't turn it in or destroy it, then we're going to fine you. Well, what if I don't pay the fine? Well, the police are going to come to your house to arrest you and take you to court for not paying this fine. Well, again, they're still coming to my house with guns. Banning a specific type of gun always leads to door-to-door gun confiscation, or at least door-to-door the state, the government goons coming to your house with guns, threatening you and your family. Every single time, that's what it boils down to. There is no other alternative. You cannot enforce this without door-to-door government goons breaking down your door with guns. This is so radical. Oh my God, if the Democrats actually implemented this plan, again, in a previous video I stated about this would literally start the Second American Civil War. You would have all these police and SWAT and other government goons breaking down people's houses all across the country because this is the most popular rifle in the country. There are hundreds of thousands of these. Actually, let me put the exact number. Stop. Wow, it was even more than I thought. Wow, I was really off. Approximately 5 million to 10 million, so let's just ballpark in the middle, so 7.5. There are 7.5 million AR-15, or at least AR-15 style, but of course, Democrats can't tell the difference. They just look at like, oh, that's an assault rifle, that's AR-15. You would have the police knocking down millions of homes across the nation. People are going to get shot. Police are going to get shot. People are going to die. Families are going to be broken up. Family members are going to get mad that the family member got shot for simply exercising their constitutional rights and not bothering anyone, so they're going to take up arms. Then the police are going to get mad, and it's just going to start a clusterfuck. It would be so horrible for the country. It would kill far more people than this rifle ever would in this country. But Democrats, they don't think of the big picture. They don't think of that scenario I just ran through you. They don't think about that whenever they think of these policies. All they see is, this is a scary-looking gun that kills people. Yes, let's ban it. They don't realize that, one, the AR-15 is used in defensive home situations thousands of times every single year in this country. Guns are used 2.5 million times every single year in defensive home situations, or defensive situations in general. Every single year. 2.5 million every single year. And since the AR-15 is the most popular rifle in the country, the AR-15 contributes to a huge chunk of that 2.5 million. The exact number? No, I don't know. They don't have that stat. How many times the AR-15 is used in defensive situations. It does enormous good to have this rifle. There's a reason why this rifle is so popular, the most popular rifle in the country, because it's really fucking good. It's not only going to take away a weapon that is used to defend homes, defend families, to defend your loved ones 2.5 million times, but their policy would create exponentially more death than this rifle ever will. Well, how much death does this rifle cause? Well, let's just look that up. These stats are for 2011, the most recent year available, and I think this is kind of actually old. Yeah, really old. But I looked at other years. It's consistently in the 300 to 400s every single year. Let's just hypothetically say, for this exercise, that the AR-15 is every single one of those 323 deaths by rifles in this country. Even though you know it's not. There's no possible way. There were hundreds of other types of rifles in this country, so that you know the AR-15 only plays a portion of that 323. But let's just give you, the Democrats, the maximum credit to their argument and say, yep, every single one of those deaths was caused by AR-15. You're going to start a policy that would kill tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, to save this tiny, tiny amount of people each year. Cars kill 50,000 people in this country every single year. Do you know how long it would take for ARs to catch up with cars? Let's just do that. I know you guys don't like math. It's just triggering for people. 154 years. Is that right? 154 years times 323. Yep. 154 years. Even if the AR was every single one of these deaths. You were going to cause the Second American Civil War to save the amount of people that... Just, it's mind-boggling. That's so radical. These people hate guns so much. They hate the Second Amendment so much, they're willing to start the Second American Civil War and kill hundreds of thousands of Americans to save 300 people per year. That is how crazy, that is batshit crazy. That is insane. That is extremely radical. That is just as radical as governments in the past that have started uprisings when they go door to door to people and take their guns, shoot them, just mass slaughter their own people to beat them into submission. That is just as radical as, like the Maoist revolution in China, where they just go to people who own land, murder them, and then give the land to peasants. Or give the land to people who don't own land. That is so radical. That is straight up fascist and communist. That is what fascist and communist nations have done for centuries. Take away people's weapons and kill them and start uprisings through their horrible policies that violate their rights. And 61% of Americans support that policy. Support that type of fascist policy. But they live in a bubble. As we saw, 94% of Democrats are more liberal than the median Republican. That's up from 70. And again, only 1 in 10 Americans have friends opposing political party. So for 90% of Democrats, they only talk with other Democrats. They have no idea how crazy they are. They have no idea how destructive their policy is. Because when they say something stupid like, I just wish the government would take all the guns away, 90% of their friends agree with that. And the 10% who don't probably don't say anything. Or if they do, then they drown them out. You're just a radical Trump-tard. You don't care about children. You want children dead, whatever, and then they don't talk anymore. This is how this happens. This is the cycle. Let's keep going, shall we? So they already hate the Second Amendment. They hate the First Amendment too. Not even do they only hate the First Amendment, but they don't even understand it. As this article says, a meager 36% of people can only name one of the 5 guaranteed freedoms. They don't even understand that their views contradict the founding principles of this nation. And if you tell them that, we're just like, well, we evolve, we change, we can't be stuck in the past. We can't be constricted by a piece of paper that's hundreds of years old. That's what they'll say whenever you use the Second Amendment as a defense against gun confiscation. That's what they tell you. Let's say the same thing too. Or they just don't care, they don't understand, they just don't think of these things. These things are all intangible, like rights, freedom of speech. These can manifest themselves in the real world, like a rally or just posting on Facebook or something. But the concept itself is intangible. Concepts are intangible. That's why low IQ people can't understand them, because they don't see them. They see dead kids in school shootings. Say, how do we stop this? We take the guns away. Boom, problem solved, boom, and they just don't think about it ever again. They don't think anything beyond that superficial thinking, which is so low IQ. They don't think, oh, well, if take away guns, we'll kill far more people than if we didn't. Like, they don't go through the whole exercise I just went through with you. Same thing with this First Amendment, or freedom of speech specifically, part of the First Amendment. This result is quite curious in the fact that 40% of Americans surveyed cannot name a single freedom guaranteed by the First Amendment. 36% can only name one of them. Americans who have so little awareness of the First Amendment are unlikely to live out its promise and see its value to a self-governing and civil society. That's the whole crux of this issue. People do not understand their rights. Americans do not understand how their rights make this place so much of a better place than everywhere else on Earth and everywhere else that has ever existed in the history of mankind. They don't understand that because it's intangible. So when people, stupid politicians, promote policies that take away their rights, they don't even realize what they're doing. They don't even realize they are supporting such radical, hostile policies to themselves. This whole article, I mean, we're already talking almost 20 minutes now, and to go through all these articles would take like an hour plus. I'll leave links, as always, for you to read them yourselves. But this is just insane. And here, the younger generation is not making any better. 40% of millennials are okay with limiting speech offense to minorities. Well, offensive is subjective. Anyone could say anything is offensive to them, and they can't objectively prove it because it's your own feelings. Hate speech is not a thing. You can't limit speech that is offensive to someone, because everyone, there are billions of people in the world, everything is offensive to at least one person. Using that logic, no one can say anything. Anyone can shut down anyone at any time saying that's offensive. That's limiting free speech. That's against the First Amendment. That is extremely radical. To just say, I have the power to shut down any speech I want. All I have to do is say it's offensive to me, or if you're a minority, all I have to say that it's offensive to me, and boom, I shut down speech. Don't you see how that will be abused a lot? It already is. It's already being abused. People just say stats. They just read stats from the FBI. That's on the FBI website, and people say that's hateful. When they just read the FBI stats and say that African Americans are now 14% of the population, but commit 50% of all the violent crime in the country, they say that's racist. That's racist, that's hateful, you can't say that. Well, it's like, I'm just reading the government website. I'm not saying it's because they're black. I'm not saying that because you're black, you're like you did this because you're black. I'm just reading the stats. That's all I'm doing. But they know that's hateful, that's racist, that's offensive, you can't say it. That's extremely radical. To give outrage mobs so much power as declare anything offensive and then therefore you should shut it down is extremely radical. It's in direct contrast with the logic that was put into the founding documents of this country. Exactly the opposite. There should be no limits on speech at all, except the one. There's two instances where you can, and that's the classic shouting fire in a crowded theater. So saying something that would directly lead to someone's harm because a stampede of people leaving the theater would create harm. Or that's the second one is very much like the first one, calling for direct violence against people. Those are the only two exceptions to the free speech rule. You can't say things that will directly lead to people being hurt or calling to violence. There's almost the same thing. Those two examples. Everything else you'll be able to say. That's what the founding fathers thought. You should be able to say whatever you want. That's free speech. Americans, it is especially 40%. That's almost half. That's almost half of the up-and-coming generation. I mean, millennials are already, the oldest ones are 34. They've been adults half their lives, almost half their lives now. They are going to become a bigger and bigger part of the population. As they get older, the older ones die out in the millennials. There's more of them to begin with. That's troubling for this country, ain't it? Then that's just two. I've been talking for more than 20 minutes. That's just two of the rights to illustrate how radical Americans are. I can go through every single amendment in the Constitution and show the exact same thing. The vast majority, does anyone know what the 10th Amendment is? No, most people don't give a shit about that amendment. That's one of the most important ones. It says anything that the Constitution does not directly say the federal government can do, it can't do. That was supposed to limit federal government and to avoid the mess we are today with a overbloated, out-of-control bureaucracy that is just infinitely larger than it ever should be. They foresaw this problem and they wrote that amendment for a reason, but people chose to ignore it, and now we're in the mess that we're in because of that. It is so hard for me to find anyone, except libertarians, who believe that, nope, if the Constitution does not say that the government can do this, then it can't. That would solve so many issues. We have the federal government, their budget should be cut by more than half easily. We are out of control spending at all these programs that have been in place for far longer than I've been alive that should have never been created in the first place, because the Constitution doesn't say the government can do that. Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, 3 big programs. That's over half of our budget. Are those huge entitlements, billions upon billions of dollars. None of those should ever exist, because the Constitution doesn't give the federal government the right to make those programs. Same thing with the 4th Amendment, right to privacy. Where was I? We were talking about that. Well, that was already here. Right to privacy, Patriot Act, collecting phone data. 61% of people said that the NSA should renew its data collection. That breaks the 4th Amendment. That breaks your right to privacy. Over half of the 61%, is that the same 61% that backs this? Probably. You're doing a fascist fucktards are ruining this country with your radicalism, and you don't even know it. If you go to random schmuck who says, oh, the NSA is going to look at your phone to prevent terrorists, the average schmuck's going to say, well, I didn't do anything wrong, so I don't care. You're giving your rights away for fear. You don't even realize what you're doing. You have such a radical policy, a radical belief about NSA data collection in the 4th Amendment, which probably you don't even know what the 4th Amendment is. You probably don't even know that you're breaking your own rights. You probably don't even know that you are supporting policies that run directly contrary to the founding principles of this country. You just don't even know, because you live in a fucking pathetic cesspool of a bubble.